gave them to other people as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is wealth. What night is it tonight? It is Monday night, and it is time for Couch Conversations with the Doctors. We're going to go around as always, and we're going to introduce our esteemed panel guests, starting with the man who is phenomenal and known for his art. That's our very own Joe Harrington.
Good evening, everybody. I introduce myself every week. My name is Joe Harrington. Most of my career was in public health and healthcare. Worked at 3 hospitals. Worked for the city and state health department. I retired in 2017 from the Illinois Department of Public Health, where I was a regional health officer for Cook County and an administrative law judge. I'll toss it to Doug while Nikki, she might be frozen.
Outstanding. And
Thank you,
thank you.
Joseph. Thank you, Joseph. I'm Dr. Graham. I spent 30 years working in the western suburbs. And after that, when I retired, spent 2 years working in the representative's office. It was an eye-opening experience, and it made me interested in public health and public service. And it's an honor to be here on this panel with the other doctors. And I'll try and answer your questions as best I can.
Outstanding. Thank you so very much, Joe. I was frozen for a second. Well, to the guy who is a nationally renowned urologist but hates accolades, but I have a question. Is there a doctor in the house? That's our very own Dr. Terry Mason. Dr. Mason?
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, the doctor is in the house, and that is as a result of a conversation that I had over 30 years with Melody Span Cooper and Purvis Span. That was how that radio show was born, after a conversation with them about trying to do something about health for the community. So here it is now, many years later, and we're still going in, and I'm grateful to do so. My name is Dr. Terry Mason, as was mentioned. I am a Chicagoan, born not here, but all my education, both from kindergarten all the way up through, including residencies in general surgery and in urology, all here in Chicago at hospitals that I'm sure people will recognize, like Mercy Hospital and what used to be our powerhouse hospital. That was Michael Reese. And so was there. And I'm grateful to have had a tremendous career during that time, working with men specifically, not just on urologic issues, but their prostate issues and other things too. So thank you very much, Nikki, for this opportunity. And if there's a question that I can answer, I will do my best to do so.
Outstanding. Well, to our weight loss guru, that's our very own physician, who is the Wolfgang Puck of weight loss and food. That's our very own Dr. Tony Hampton, that family practice medicine doctor. Dr. Hampton?
Hey, thank you, Nikki and Congressman. Happy to be here. I work on the south side of Chicago. I work with Advocate Health and primarily function as a family doctor, focusing on root cause medicine, where we focus on why you got sick in the first place, as opposed to treating symptoms. I have a once a day clinic where I focus on obesity, and just here to lend a voice of reason as it relates to encouraging everybody to focus on using the fork as the primary source of healing. So happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Well, to the man that makes this possible for us each and every Monday night, to the one who teaches us that true wealth is your health, that's our very own Congressman of the Illinois 7th Congressional District, Congressman Danny K. Davis. Congressman?
Well, let me thank all of us. We talked a while ago about the possibility of hospitals closing, and just this past week, we saw the announcement that West Suburban Hospital was shutting down. And then, of course, I read in the paper today where one of the partners has indicated and made a vow that he will get the hospital reopened. And of course, I live across the street from West Suburban Hospital. People often drive into my driveway and leave their cars as they run across the street to the emergency room. So you can imagine what my neighbors and I feel like right now, knowing that that hospital may not reopen and that this great big building right in the heart of the community where we live may become a community eyesore. And so we have not panicked yet, but we also know that it will cause disruption for many people who go there and receive health care. And that's where they get their health care. And so anybody who thought we were joking or just having some conversation when we were raising the alarm that as a result of the cuts in Medicaid and cuts in health research and cuts in budgets would probably cause some of our hospitals to close. Of course, the other hospital closed recently, Weiss, and I hope this does not become a pattern. Um, so I don't know if that's what we want to talk about. Uh, but what happens to a community when a hospital closes? It's not just the individuals who feel the brunt, but it's the whole community that will experience some difficulty. So maybe the question becomes, what can we do to make sure that we don't have other hospitals like West Suburban that sits in a middle class community, Oak Park, Illinois, um, a well respected, well known, desirable community. And yet we still have all of these different problems and different things to be confronted with. So I don't know how we keep it open if it closes and how difficult and how challenging it would be to get it reopened and to reestablish the credibility that an institution would need to have in order for individuals to want to go there and get the services. So, why don't we talk about what's happening to healthcare delivery in our country? And how can we make sure that we sustain what we've been able to develop and not go backwards to a different era? And we know that if we don't have the resources, then the next stop is Burr Oaks or not Burr Oaks, someplace else. So while we make progress, we still got challenges and things that we've got to do. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for lending your expertise to these discussions. It helps us to gain a better understanding of what we're up against.
Well, Congressman, if I can just sort of kick it off a bit here. These things, these closures or these reductions in service, we've had, and even on this show, many conversations around this and about this. And what comes to mind as the two things that seem to always surface is the financial resources for these institutions to be able to provide what they're doing, even though it may not be everything that needs to be, but there's a difficult situation just trying to keep the services that are needed to continue at a certain level of funding that doesn't seem to be adequate from one point of view.
Yeah, one of the things, and I've said this, we've had this conversation before, and I serve on the board of Cook County Health. And when the president's budget was passed, they indicated that there was going to be an $80 million reduction in Medicaid funding to the county as a result of that budget. And what hospitals across the country, particularly the hospitals and communities across the country, the safety net hospitals, the hospitals of last recourse for many people, they're the ones that are hit the hardest with those cuts. And many hospitals then said that they could not continue to function and operate with the kind of money that would come in. The unfortunate thing, this is the first of possibly many hospitals that will be closing across the country. It's not the only one. And it's the climate we're currently in. And you know, one of the things that Terry would always say in dire times is, you know, that we have to figure this out for ourselves. So the cavalry ain't coming. And so this is something we're really going to have to figure out moving forward. What it does do, it makes the importance of the FQHCs even bigger. So at least people could get access to primary care. Hospitals are really for that care you can't get in a clinic. And that's going to become less available to some people. And in some instances, it'll increase the time to get someone to a tertiary care center where it's life or death. And some people will actually die. And that's an unfortunate byproduct of this. And so this is just one of many dominoes that are probably going to fall in the near future. And I don't think there's a simple answer to it. The only thing that we can do, and it sounds like it's somewhat fruitless, is put pressure on the Congress to really provide adequate funding for the healthcare system. And maybe this will push all of us to really lobby our individual congressmen and senators, because this is going to be devastating, not only in Chicago and in Illinois, but across the country.
I'll add, I definitely take it personal when I hear the hospital I trained at as a family doctor is crumbling. And I got wind of this because twice a year I meet with the class of 98 for the family practice residency. About 5-6 of us get together. And in fact, the last time we got together, we invited Dr. Mark Loafman, who was instrumental in starting the family obstetric program where family doctors were doing C-sections and tubals and DNCs. And so he was known throughout the country for really creating one of the most innovative programs for family doctors in the country. So it's personal. It's also personal because my 2 baby boys, who are now adults, were both born there. I was given the privilege of delivering my second child there. So I'll always have a soft place in my heart for West Suburban. However, I also know that in order to exist in a very volatile world, you have to really run that machine very efficiently. And it's a combination of how you run the business and how you support that business funding wise. And we live in a country where I don't think we prioritize healthcare the way we should. And we talked about this last week. I looked it up, and 66% or so of all the bankruptcies in the country are medical bill related, more than half. So to me, if a country cares about the health of people, it would probably ensure that if we're gonna, not pass the state budget and all the things that happen in politics in a state, we would certainly ensure that the hospitals get their Medicaid funding, especially a hospital that has a large percentage of its income coming from Medicaid, because there are many people in Oak Park who have more resources that drive right by West Suburban, and they go to other hospitals like Northwestern, Rush, et cetera. So the engine that fuels that hospital is heavy on Medicaid and, of course, Medicare. And if we don't fund that properly and we don't protect that, then hospitals are going to become vulnerable. Not to mention hospitals like West Suburban, which are unfortunately bought and sold and bought and sold and bought and sold by investors who don't have an invested interest in the community. And when you buy and sell and buy and sell, it's like a flip. It's like Richard Gere in his movie, where you just buy a company, you strip it to its core, and then you give it to the next investor. And so there's got to be ways to somehow mitigate that and protect the hospital so that that won't happen. That's why I think education, healthcare, a lot of these things should be a public good that the government helps to sponsor, because we need healthcare and we need education. So it's really personal. And I think the solutions are complicated, but they're also very simple. And what I mean by that is that I think it's just about, what are your priorities? And we live in a country that doesn't prioritize the most basic needs, I think, in humanity. And I think until we change that, we'll continue to see these outcomes.
So I wanted to add what Dr. Hampton said. I think that we really have to bring home the economic value of healthcare. I heard today that there are people in the House of Representatives who are considering cutting some of the supplements to the Affordable Care Act to pay for the war in Iraq. And all I can do is remind them of what happened when COVID first broke out. We had a near economic collapse. We had a near collapse of our healthcare system, which meant that there would have been no national defense. If all your young servicemen had been exposed to COVID, there would have been nobody to fly the planes, nobody to sail the ships, nobody to drive the tanks, or man the howitzers. So it ought to be made perfectly clear to all those people in Congress that in order to have a healthy economy and to have a national defense, you have to have healthcare first. A hospital isn't just a place for treating people to recover, but it is an economic driver in that community. It provides jobs and paychecks so people can go out and buy things from that neighborhood grocery store, from the shopping center to the gas station. So every time a hospital closes, that community shrinks as well economically. I don't think that we can afford that kind of national policy. I think we really have to, again, promote the economic necessity of healthcare first. Because AI won't help you if you're all sick in the hospital. AI ain't going to help you if you're in the ICU. AI ain't going to help you if you're dying from leukemia. It's not going to work that way. You've got to have healthcare first in order to program the damn computers and build the chips and the servers and the power centers. So we have to we change our educational programs so people understand healthcare has to come first.
I'll hop in here. Y'all know I always got a book. Hold on. I had it right by me. I don't know. Today it just happened to be a day. I don't know if I can see this one. This one? Nope. This book, oh, there you go, is a book for anybody who really want to know how healthcare works. Introduction to the Financial Management of Healthcare Organizations. The reason why that book is so important is because they're always, did you all see it? I don't know if y'all can see it on your screen. Okay. There are nuances to how healthcare works. The basics work like everything, So spaces like West Suburban, I won't name names, and it's cousins and sisters and all that stuff. We mentioned a while ago when certain insurers started moving back Medicaid, Medicare. When you see that kind of stuff changing or vacillating at a hospital or a clinic or anything, that's usually a sign that the other insurers are going to increase their profits. So, for instance, if I go get care and I have insurance or I don't have insurance, the person that's going to pay for that care is the insurer, right? So what the hospital does is, or a clinic or whoever gives the care, and then waits for reimbursements in a lot of little situations, right? And so the thing with hospitals is that the smaller ones have to pay more for the tubes of blood, more for the mask of oxygen, more for the pill that they give you per pill, per tube, than the larger entities, right? So what happens is the larger entities on average are paying less to get the stuff, but then a lot of times are part of a organization that can then get reimbursement and maintain reimbursements from those insurers, right? So the drug supply, the supplies, things like that. So most systems are already operating off the financial management book is good because most systems are operating off tiny margins. So for systems, the amount of times you can give that tiny margin of care that you get reimbursed for kind of matters. So a larger system is going to have more people working there that can put through more patients at any given time, which is going to lead to what we call in this industry payer dominance. And you all tell me if I'm going too far. Payer or not explaining the details clear enough. Payer dominance is when organizations like, CVS, people think CVS is a pharmacy. Look it up. CVS is not a pharmacy. CVS is a healthcare entity that has insurance and pharmacies, and all this stuff, right? So we look at it, we think this pharmacy, that, this pharmacy, that. But places like United Health, CVS, and things like that can add more arms to their services and take those smaller margins as they add more people. That leads to payer dominance. And so that's why, like Mr. Harrington said, FQHCs are important. Unfortunately, most people don't go and get preventive health, right? They'll wait until something, but because the system, not blaming it on a person, the system can be hard to navigate because there are all those nuances. So they'll be like, man, I don't even want to deal with it until it kind of balances out. I'd rather deal with the healthcare system than deal with this achy knee I have, right? Until the achy knee is more convenient for me to deal with than the healthcare system, I'm not going. When the achy knee starts in being more inconvenient than dealing with getting to Dr. Green, did she call back, all this other stuff, then they don't go. So a lot of people end up using the hospitals as a way of preventive care. Then workforce breakdown, you can pay entities like Rush, different entities can pay less per person for the name, things like that. So there are a lot of things, I'll stop there, that go into it. Essentially, it's the healthcare margin. Once that margin gets too small for an entity to maintain per person, then they'll have to close. So It's about the revenue stream. It's about how many people, and it's about healthcare dominance. And that's what we're seeing on the backs of the funds, a lot of times federally, to take care of patients that need it most, who had to wait because they didn't have access to care, things like that, are being stripped away because of kind of what's going on nationally in our country. So, like people said before, as this goes, we're going to see more of this until we get the opportunity to make a different decision about what's federally going on, make different decisions about what's locally going on, and so on. Okay, sorry, that was a lot, but Healthcare Introduction to Healthcare Financial Management is a great book.
Well, let
Yeah.
me ask this question if I could. What is it that these other countries do that have better health status than we have in the United States of America, and yet don't seem to have as much difficulty or as much of a problem providing care to their citizenry? What is it that they do that we're not doing?
It's not. It's really has nothing to do with what they do. It's a different approach to healthcare. You know, there's been a lot of talk about universal healthcare and healthcare as a right. In those countries, they feel that everyone deserves access to healthcare. Even in South Africa, which some people and our current president has some disdain for, primary care is free. Nobody pays for primary care. It's a right. You have a right to be healthy, and so the governments pick up the cost. I had mentioned this before. My cousin moved to France, and they have universal coverage. He had prostate cancer. He never saw a bill. It's a different approach. We have a fee for service based system. It's part of the American economy. Is what drives things, and hospitals really, in the model of hospitals right now, they're really under attack. And Tony implied it. Unless you're a system, not an individual hospital, unless you are a system.
Well, how do the businesses make money?
But the systems make money because they offer different things. They don't just offer care. There are other things. Cook County is different in terms of a system, but they're large. They have a network of hospitals. They're doing large scale clinical research. Right now, our academic medical centers are under fire, but they're better funded than the safety net hospitals because they have other sources of income. They have major contracts with insurance companies. The safety net hospitals don't have those things. And you're going to see, I mean, that this is something that they've been talking about for the last year and a half in terms of the threats to the safety net system. And so what we're seeing is the safety net system, not only in Illinois, but across the country, unraveling because we have, as Dr. Mason has pointed out, we have a fee for service based healthcare system. Healthcare system can be bought, not healthcare. Healthcare can be bought, and you pay a fee for it. And if you can't pay the fee, you get the service. That's the American model of healthcare. Venture capital has gone into healthcare in a big way. So what's happened is you have people that are looking at the assets of an institution as income. And they don't care about healthcare. They care about their assets and the amount of money that they can make. And they're making business decisions. There's a different approach to making decisions about healthcare if you're in the business of healthcare. If you're in the business of making money, and that's what venture capital is, and that's what their business is, they're looking at the return on the investment. They may invest in a system, but the first thing they're going to do is look at how can they streamline it, how can they possibly make it more effective, and how can they create better margins so they get money back.
So
We're going to see more of this.
one of the other important differences is In European countries, the government negotiates with big pharmacy for the price of the drugs. So because we don't, we end up paying more and we pay for the lost profits in Europe. So that's one thing that drives our healthcare. I don't believe that overseas you have 5 or 6 different insurance companies that are essentially telling the physicians or the hospitals what they're going to make in each procedure. I think that's defined by the government. So the government will determine what the physician's salary is and compensation of the hospitals. So the insurance company can say, we're going to take a portion of that premium dollar, we're going to pay ourselves bonuses and pay ourselves a shareholder dividend. I don't think we have that same conflict of interest taking place in the European countries either.
Yes, that's what, oh, go ahead. Somebody.
Okay, no, I hit you. Go ahead.
Dr. Graham, that's exactly what I was going to say. There are more people who have an insert, going back to why the margins on healthcare are so small. There are more people that have the ability to insert themselves between the doctor and the patient, to get paid for whatever. And then, as opposed to, we always say we want a competitor market. In some of these markets, what happens is, and it's literature, they will launch their drug or supply line, face mask, all that other stuff. They'll launch it at a certain price that's high in the US, and then they negotiate down from there in other countries that have mechanisms to control the market for certain things. So they'll just pitch it high in the US, and then they'll go to the UK and say, oh, well, you won't let us charge that? Okay, well, we'll actually charge this. And they can still make a profit. So there's no kind of cap in a lot of situations to the how much someone can make, which I will say, if you look back in the legislature, there was prior to this administration, there were plenty of things that were put in place to try to control that market and make it more fair for the patient, right? And now in this administration, they're lifting all that. So think about your lisinopril pill, or think about your diabetes medicine as what's happening with oil. Okay, so that's why these smaller hospitals can't survive. Just like Dr. Hampton said, I think the systems have more. Oh, this is a lot. So then I can launch the hepatitis line that can give me more revenue, or I can hop over here and launch this line that can give me more revenue, and they can use the different lines of services to balance out what's going on in that system. But if you're not a system, you don't have the opportunity to leverage a different service line. You are that one hospital.
But if I was going to be a physician, would I rather live in the United States of America or in Great Britain?
You have stated the fundamental problem with our beautiful capitalistic system. Now, I am very happy that I make a good living as a doctor, and I do agree that I'd probably stay put if you ask me that question, because but as a human being who cares about other humans, I can only use this analogy. If you think about the mob who offers protection against threats that they actually create, right? Health insurers provide protection against medical costs, yet they systematically increase co-payments and premiums. So they create a parasitic relationship. They claim to be my friend in this system, but ultimately they can cause me harm. So I want to live in a world where we care about human beings more than profit. I'm okay with the person who made my phone getting rich. I'm okay with that because I love my phone. But I don't want my family's health to be a profit center for somebody else who really cares more about profit than my family's health. And that's what's wrong with our system, is that we don't value life more than we value profit. So yes, I'm just as greedy, and I'm part of the problem because I do want to get paid well for my service. But I'll be honest, if you said to me today, and I've had this conversation with my wife, would I be willing to take a 25% pay cut to fund universal health care? And the answer is 100% yes. I do not need an expensive car that I have outside that I drive. I actually don't need that car. I don't need it, but I have it because this system allows for that. I want to live in a world where we care more about people than profits. And again, we have to do better than our current system. If it's true that we can have systems that we can duplicate in the rest of the world, where people are just not dying because they're not insured. That's just embarrassing. We should be so embarrassed that people literally die in this country because they're uninsured, where in other countries, that's not happening. And so I'm a very primary care, root cause prevention doctor, and I would prefer you pay me more money for healing people and reversing disease than for managing disease. And that's the system we have. It's a fee-for-service system. No matter how the patient does, I get paid money to take care of them. And all of these mobsters, these middlemen, are sucking up money from the system. By the time it gets to the patient, you're probably at 20% of the money. And that's just embarrassing. So I don't want to always sound dramatic on this platform, but the more I think about this, the more I'm disappointed in a country who claims to be the richest, with the most innovation and most technology. And I know that incentivizes people to do great things. But if we're going to not use great things for good, then what are we doing?
You know, Tony, I'd like to just offer something to what you say. I've been saying much. Because first of all, we need to understand there's no value proposition in America that incentivize profitably health. There's no money in health. The money is in managing disease and using medications and whatever else we want to use, or wherever or how else we want to use it. That's where the money is. There's no incentive, no financial incentive to cure or to really help anybody. And we've got tons of pharmaceutical companies that's what they did or do. I was part of that when I was in practice. And that's when I learned about the fact that there's no real value proposition to make anybody well, because the money in America is made on managing sickness. That's where it's made. And we need to stop deluding ourselves and to tell people that we're masquerading like we're doing something when we're not. And these things are tied not only just to medication, but to food, incentives, all kinds of other things that we could talk about. And I won't right now, but that's the thing. That's what I see. And until there is a value proposition that really speaks to getting and keeping people high, it's not going to keep them well. It's not going to change.
We have let me just say this real quick. We have a small amount of that's actually true in this country. And that's why we created Medicare Advantage and these different programs. The reality is the health system I work for, Advocate Health, has saved Medicare $900 million since 2012 by doing the type of work we're talking about, more prevention and keeping people healthy type work. So it's not that we don't understand it's possible that could work. We just have to realign. Now, there's going to be collateral damage, though. So if I work for a large insurance company, I'm not going to be happy about this model. But there will be other people in that model that's the future model. And we have other examples in other countries where we can then realign the incentive. So if you pay me to keep people well, I will take some of that money, put it in my pocket, and I would take some of that money to create more programs to keep people well. So you have to just incentivize people in a way that'll serve the country and the human good. And yes, there will be collateral damage, but we're still going to need innovation. We're still going to need technology, and those people will still get paid, but they're going to be paid in a way that's more appropriate. In other words, it was suggested that we don't negotiate things. So we can't have a country that pays, $1 for a drug, and then the next country pays 20 cents for the same drug. We have to be in a country where we actually align incentives, and we actually do the normal business interaction where we barter trade and we do things, but we don't do it at the cost of people. So I do agree that it's almost like, how do we make guns illegal in this country? It would be very difficult, right? I think it's a better country if we did. But the question is, are we willing to have the courage to do the things that people that are important? But again, going back to Citizens United, if we have a world where people can't raise their voice and change the current system, we'll be stuck in the current system.
Yeah, one of the things, and we need to be honest about it, we live in a capitalist country. And so a lot of it is driven by our economic system, whereby in some of these foreign countries, socialists, a lot of these systems are owned or managed by the government. They regulate, they make it. And in America, it's a capitalist system. Businesses can make their own decisions about how much they want to raise prices. Government can intervene at some point, but the advantage, and that's what this is showing us to business and big business, especially at this time and with this administration, that they're leveraging the opportunity they have, current administration, to put themselves in a much better position financially. That's what venture capital does. They look at opportunities and they look at businesses that may be opportunities. And there's been some significant investments recently in the healthcare industry in a variety of ways. And that's been in hospitals too. But what they look at is how can, and the premise behind it is, how can we increase the profitability? It's not focused on the healthcare of the people that are getting help. It's focused on generating income for the investors in the company. And so it's a different model.
But we advocate, we push what we believe in, and we die, and the system continues to roll. And the next group comes along and they do the same thing. And we may change things a little bit, but you have a right to do whatever you decide to do. And that's kind of what makes it a democracy. I mean, whatever it is that you believe, then that's what you ought to be promoting and pushing for and trying to activate and make real. And so when people tell me about my dear friend, say Willie Wilson, giving away his money, and I say, well, ultimately, somehow the money is going to be used for some purpose. And if a person wants to give it away before they leave, because they're going to give it away after they leave, then it's their right to do as they please and do as they decide. And that makes our country sort of the country that it is. And so if you're not one of those two kinds of people, then I say there are those who shape and mold society. And then there are those who are shaped and molded by society. And so you just determine, will you be a molder or a moldy. And it's your choice. I mean, each one of us can make that decision. And so we can lay in the cut and let things exist as they are. Or we can do whatever it is that we do to try and push things towards the way we'd like for them to be, even though they may not change or happen while we're around. I think that's what Dr. King meant when he said, I may not be there with you, but eventually you get there. I may be gone. And so maybe we'll change the healthcare delivery system and change our economic system. And we may not be there when it changes, but we're on the way. And people feel good about being on the way, feeling that, yeah, eventually it's going to happen. I just won't be here when it does. And I think that's what we are hearing. And I think that's what drives much of the activism of society. I think that's why there were millions of people out on the streets and in the streets on Saturday. And they were out there for that reason, that they want to change things from the way they are to becoming more like the things they'd like to see, even though they may not have defined exactly what that is. They know just they know they don't like what it is. So let's change it. And I think that's the way we're headed. So right on.
Absolutely. Want to say hey to Connie Taylor, who is here. She says good evening to everyone. Dorothy Murphy is here and she says hello. Melinda Maxwell is here. She also says hello. Angela Underwood is here. Hey, Angie. She says hello just as well. Dorothy Murphy has a brief statement that she wanted to share. She says we have to start prevention and healthy living very early in life and provide resources to get it going. Melinda Maxwell also says a lot of countries have banned certain foods also. I believe this helps. And Pastor Crystal Kyles is here. Hey, Pastor Kyles. And she says this is so true. We have Renelle Perry, who is here with us as well. I want to say hey to Renelle Perry. We also want to say hey to the guys in the garage. The weather is breaking, so I know you guys are transitioning from the basement back to your garage. We want to say hey. I see that you all are here. Yolanda Williams is here, and she says, good evening. Want to say hey to everybody over at the Core Center. They are working, but they are watching just as well. Renelle Perry sends a question. She says, what are proactive steps we can take as a community to ensure this trend does not trickle down to areas that are not near urban areas, such as should we start an online petition or should we do a Healthy People's March or a health march? What are your thoughts?
I think letting your alderman, your state representative, your congressman know you are a group of individuals, you vote, and that's important to them. So you need to communicate to them what your values are and what you want them to do. And the bigger the numbers, the more impact you'll have.
I would agree with you, Doug. I'm a little more pessimistic because there's so much impact around trying to stop us from doing the right thing. That's the real issue. And so much of what we talked about earlier could be done, but the value proposition is such that people won't make any money. And I'll talk a little about that at another time, because I'm really upset because of what we're doing in this country to people, to actually think that what the way, the paradigm that we're working on is to wait for somebody has symptoms or a problem or something like that in many ways before trying to do something. Because usually what that means, if the person's disease has gone further, it's going to cost more, going to spend more to try and keep it under control. So I'll stop right there, because I'm so disenchanted with the idea that there is no value proposition for health in America. None. No value proposition. Because if we did, we'd be really doing a lot more on what we're doing in terms of what we advise people, or advise them, or think that they should eat. We'd feed our children. Those things that they serve as lunches in the school lunchrooms are the worst things I've ever seen. And I was with a group of dietitians that worked in this area, and she talked about how terrible this stuff is. And we're feeding this to our children. So there's more, and I won't go further right now.
Okay, well, Dr. Mason, you have created an uproar with that, because we are getting tons of reels right now on Instagram talking about legislation was passed, and legislation was passed, and that parents should know, and their children aren't eating healthy. So, Dr. Mason, you have kicked off something here. I can't even keep up with everything that's reeling across.
Well, that's good.
Also, with that, go ahead, Dr. Mason.
No, I'm just going to say we got to get started somewhere. And the other thing we got to do, here we got all these units, and these dialysis units sitting in our community in what used to be parks. And we've got and hundreds of, a lot of money being spent on dialysis. And yet we still have, because when I was working with this, people are still drinking tons of soda, doing all kinds of things. And I know there's some behavioral things, but some of that is also not just behavioral. There are some addictive components to sugar and things of that nature. So perhaps at another time, we could spend a little more time talking about what we could do to try.
And just to piggyback, and this is very briefly, and there are a lot of companies and organizations are making a lot of money off of illness and sickness. That's essentially what he's saying. It's driving a lot of what we see, but the end result is what we're talking about.
Well, outstanding. We have tons of reels now that's saying it's a law. It's already there. When are they going to enforce that law? Then we have two questions that we got to answer. One question is a promise from last week. And then the statement that was shared just now is, it's not just the sugar, it's the carbonation in the drinks. And one day, if someone can share how the carbonation in the drinks actually attack your kidneys. So thank you so very much for sharing that. Our question that we promised that we would ask last week was, a young lady shared that she's concerned that most OBGYNs share that after you have completed your cycle, it's recommended that you no longer get a test called a pap smear. It was very personal to her because her mother, 20 years after, actually was diagnosed with stage 4 cervical and ovarian cancer. She was wondering if we could write some type of legislation that states that maybe it doesn't have to be every year, but maybe it can be every other year, every couple years, similar to a mammogram, because this just isn't a catch-all for every patient. And that all doctors tend to say this, except for a very few handful of female GYNs that share that you cannot hold this standard to every female. So she was wondering if some of the doctors could weigh in on that.
So this is a question related to when people are asked and that you don't have to get pap smears anymore, right? There's a standard. The American College of Gynecology has a standard. And essentially, The first thing I want to say is that the standard doesn't catch everybody. That's one of the problem with guidelines, is that you have a standard. I literally had this conversation with a patient today about, she was 74 and she was like, why am I not being asked to continue to have a pap smear, you know? And what happens is when they make these population-wide decisions, they're based on harm, benefit versus risk. And they find that after certain ages, certain screening tests are going to potentially cause more harm than benefit. So, and that's because when you do the procedure on a person who really shouldn't have had the procedure, you may harm them because you did a procedure, which has risk, right? So the problem is you're going to miss some people. so it's designed for the population, but not necessarily for the individual. So after the age of 65, that's when we, for the most part, stop doing pap smears. If people have had negative pap smears up to that point and they're not considered, at high risk, you can argue all people of color at high risk, but that's just how it goes. And then of course, if you had a total hysterectomy with your cervix removed, at that point, there's no need for a pap smear based on those rules. So I think when I hear these rules, which allow us to get a pap smear from the age of, basically every 3 years, it's every 3 years, basically HPV testing, because HPV is associated with cervical cancer. When you have these rules, they're really guidelines. So what you want to do with your clinician who's rational is to say, you know what, because, put all the risk in front of them that you may feel put you at high risk. Maybe it's your family history, et cetera. And then you have to negotiate and make a collaborative decision with your doctor. I will do a mammogram or a pap smear or whatever sooner than the guidelines if the individual in front of me, I feel, has justified that decision. So always remember, guidelines are guidance. They're not necessarily rules that have to be followed. And we can deviate from those rules with a collaborative discussion. So that's kind of my 2 cents to this topic.
Yeah, the only thing that I want to add is that the guidelines sometimes dictate what insurance companies will or will not pay for. That's the downside. You can always get a pap smear, but whether insurance will pay for it or not is a different matter. If it's inconsistent with the guidelines, they're going to question whether or not it was necessary to be done, and the physician will have to provide justification. And if the justification has enough merit, then they will approve the cost of it. So it gets back to this whole our system. I mean, you can have a pap smear if you want to have a pap smear, even against your doctor's advice. You can find somebody to do a pap smear, but you may have to pay for the pap smear. I mean, that gets to be the other thing. You do have a certain amount of control, and so you want to make informed decisions, and you want to listen, and you want to educate yourself about what your options are and what you can do. And hopefully you get a good doctor, because a good doctor, someone like Dr. Hampton, Dr. Mason, Dr. Graham, Dr. Maya, Dr. 100, they will do that. But there are a lot of doctors that are just going to go by the book, and they see a volume of patients. So sometimes they don't have the time to do those things.
And I'll say this, and it'll be mine until next Monday, because I do have to hop. That guideline, like Dr. Hampton said, is younger than 65. Once a person gets 65, the guideline says don't do it, with the caveat if they've had negative or tests that show they did not have cervical cancer, either 3 consecutive pap smears or testing for a human papillomavirus, HPV. That's that virus on that one less commercial, right? That's the virus that causes cervical cancer, right? On the other, so if they've had tests, like usually within the last 10, really I do 5 years, that show that they did not have that, you stop at 65. If they have not, then the guideline says continue. But just like Dr. Hampton said, the guidelines look at averages, right? And just like Mr. Harrington said, at some point, to sum up this whole conversation, we have to choose something different. I can't tell you how many times I've sat at leadership tables, at community tables as a patient, where we will remotely, is just stuck in our head. I call it almost a slave mentality. We will see a system not work and still participate in it. We have to say enough is enough. You don't have to be a healthcare leader. I mentioned healthcare leaders. I can think during COVID how many times I sat at those tables and I was like, wait, why are we doing this? It's wrong. And you can actively decide not to participate, not to do it, and you will be okay. A lot of times in our minds in this country, we think we just have to go with the flow or participate in systems while we watch them be broken. And I want to encourage everybody to understand, just like them people did with Ozempic, because it used to be illegal to write Ozempic for weight loss, literally illegal. And the people drove the system to do something different. You can do something different, not just with Ozempic, but you can also do something different from the system the next time you vote. So you don't like it, there's a ballot for that. All right. Thank you. Until next Monday.
All right. Well, right before you go, Dr. Maya, there is there's somebody on Instagram who, this is probably the 10th time they've sent this message in reference to dark people and red lipstick. This is crazy. However, I'm going to share this and be done with it. This is a Christmas present from Dr. Maya, and it was made by an African-American woman. So there is no, it's all natural products. And it is Boss Lady and Rich Auntie. There are two mixtures. So there you go. There you have it. And I think you can actually contact Dr. Maya. She works with a young woman who makes it. So they have made it. And if you just hit her up on Instagram, she'll tell you where you can get it. So thank you so very much. With that being said, we're going to do our Until Next Mondays. And Dr. Hampton, we're going to start with you. What's your Until Next Monday?
Well, I'm a victim of positive thinking. Maybe I listen to too much Anthony Robbins and Anthony Robbins and those types. But I do have a lot of hope in the future. I know the world seems crazy. I always tell my patients, the world is crazy, but I'm not sure I would have preferred to have been born 100 years ago. So as crazy as it is, I think it's always been crazy. It just feels a little crazier because we have situational awareness because of technology. So I just think people should really focus on what they can control. And part of that is minimizing the need to go into the hospital in the first place. So find one routine. I just recorded a video that I haven't released yet, and it talks about what happens if you walk 10 minutes after your dinner for 30 days. And then I talk about what happens in your body. Let's do some new routines for 2026. Rather it's movement, since the weather's changing, rather it's what you eat, rather making sure you go to bed on time. You don't need coffee in the morning if you get 7 or 8 hours of sleep many days. So let's just get 7 or 8 hours of sleep. So I just encourage everybody, don't be in despair. There are some people who are smiling tonight. And there's a reason why they're smiling, because they have a different perspective. So try to have a perspective of hope that tomorrow's going to be better, and then do your little part to make your life and the world around you better. That'll be mine until next Monday.
Outstanding, outstanding. Well, I want to say hey to Pastor Deal. Pastor Deal says, thank you, Congressman. This is always delightful to have every Monday night. And he wanted to make sure that he wanted you to make sure that he was here. Also, Josephine Wade, Mother Wade wants you to know that she is here just as well. She says she's going to call on tomorrow because she has a topic for next Monday. So thank you, Mother Wade, for chiming in. I want to say hey to Pamela Blackman, who is here. Hey, Pam, how are you? Tamara Fair is here just as well. Hey, Tamara, how are you doing? To Evangelist Elizabeth Lockhart, who is here. She says that she and Alderman Mitz are also watching. And Alderman Mitz says, when are we going to talk about blood pressure? So absolutely, Alderman Mitz, we will come up with a topic on blood pressure and we will have that conversation. Just as well, I want to say hey to Joanne Hinton that is here with us on tonight, to Chief Valdemir Talley, who is here with us on tonight, just as well. Renelle Perry says, I appreciate the conversation. However, real life situations show that we need to rethink this because the evidence shows having an annual pap smear has been done. This would have gotten caught way before the stage 4. We should ask ourselves if this is what our loved ones have to feel like. A lot of things should be negotiated, but our care and test should not be one of them. I think she's saying a couple things in that same sentence, but we'll figure it out. Let's get this legislation going so women can be more informed. Well, thank you, Renelle, for sharing that just as well. Jack Orloff is here, and Jack says education. As always, education. So thank you guys so very much. Well, Dr. Mason, you're until next Monday.
I'm going to go back to John 5 and ask the question that was asked John 5, and that is, do you want to be well? See, that's the first question we got to ask. Do we want to be well? And if so, then things like the things that many of my colleagues are doing different ways to get there. And there's no way you can say you want to be well and eating the stuff that we're eating. So we'll have more conversation about that as we go along. But it's not about don't. It's about love yourself enough to eat the best things you can eat, to give you the best energy you can get, and to give you the best health outcomes that you can get.
Outstanding. Well, Doug, you're until next Monday. You're muted, Doug.
I want to follow up with what Dr. Mason said. I think we all have to really become our own healthcare investors. That when you go to the grocery store, we have to decide when we buy that little bag of Doritos for $3, is that a good investment in our health or not? And if we decide to have that 6-pack of Coca-Cola with 28 grams of sugar in it, is that a good investment or not? And if we decide that we're going to go home and sit, instead of take additional 30 or 40 steps, get some exercise, we're going to have to make the decision, is that the investment or not? Because as Dr. Mason says, no one's going to come to our rescue. The only way that we can plan for the future is to invest in our health wisely.
All right. Thank you so very much, Doug. Thank you. Miss Honey is here. She says, good evening, folks. So thank you so much. Yolanda also says, tell it like it is, Dr. Mason. We have to change our thinking. All right. Well, Joe, you're until next Monday.
Well, I'm going to channel Dr. Mason in a different way. And I was reminded as we were having this discussion of something I heard years ago. There are 3 types of people in this world: those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who wondered what happened. I consider myself to be someone that makes things happen. You can make change in your life. You have the power. We don't have the power. You have the power. What I'm encouraging you to do is to take care of yourself, to take control of your health and be in charge, because you have the power and you are capable of doing it.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Thank you so very much. Well, to that there is a comment in from Facebook. Really quickly, you are correct. There is a BA 3.2 COVID. Dr. Hampton and Dr. Maya has popped off. They will be back next week. I'll make sure that we put your question in for that. Yes, the numbers have risen slightly. However, they're enforcing and reminding people to wash your hands and wear masks. So yes, COVID is still real. It is still out here. The new variant is BA.3.2. So if you wash your hands, wear a mask, and that's something we've been talking about for the longest, it can lessen your chances. So yes, we will have the doctors do a greater or a deeper dive into it for you on next week. Well, Congressman, as always, take us home.
Well, let me thank all of our panelists for the profound comments that they have made this evening. I'm glad to know that Alderman Emma Mitz is back from Arkansas, and Alderman, did you bring any turnip bottoms back with you so that I can make sure that I'm eating the right stuff. So, Emma, I'm glad to know that you've made it back from down in the homeland. But also, Sean Ford and I were visiting churches yesterday. And one of the churches that we visited, we ended up listening to the sermon because we got there while the pastor was preaching. And of course, it was Palm Sunday. And he was talking about the fact that Jesus, sent word that he needed a donkey uh, to ride through the streets and that kind of thing. And he sent for a donkey. And so, Dr. Mason, I think that, people want to do the right thing, but he also said that the donkey was stubborn. And people were trying to figure, why would he get a donkey? Here's a donkey that may not do what you want him to do. And of course, trying to ride a donkey, that could be tough also. So I think a lot of people kind of like the donkey. They're just stubborn. So it's hard to change those habits. They know the right thing, but doing the right thing is just so challenging. And so as we go into Easter, maybe we'll just stop being like the donkey and won't be as stubborn and won't be as kick back, and maybe we'll kick up and go in the direction. But it's been a stimulating discussion, a wonderful, wonderful discussion. And as a matter of fact, I'm beginning to wonder what I'll do on Monday nights if we don't have these discussions. I look forward to them. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for a delightful evening, and we'll see you next Monday. Thanks to everybody. All right.